Coming to the type study of the frog, the frogs and the toads, and these are the tailless amphibians that belong to the order Enura or the Salientian. And coming to its habit and habitats, they live in a variety of the environments, and the most of the frogs which live prefer to live near to the water, whereas the toads are actually well adapted for the terrestrial kind of the environments. So all the adult frogs and toads are actually the carnivorous in their habitat. So comparatively the carnivores, and Rana tigrina, among all the different types of the frogs that are seen, Rana tigrina is the most common Indian frog, which is popularly known as Indian bullfrog. So frogs and toads are poikiloderms, and that means poikilothermic anamniotes. So that means they can enable to adjust their body temperature with respect to their environmental conditions, and during their embryonic development they are without amnion layer development, and that's why they are kept treated as anamniotes. So cold blooded animals and do not provided with the amnion layer, so in that way they are regarded as poikilothermic anamniotes. Coming to the other interesting phenomenon associated with frogs and these toads are hibernation and estivation. So during the adverse environmental conditions, and like during the summer season, due to the increase of the having the rise of the temperatures, or even in the winter due to the fall of the temperatures, and because of these two adverse conditions, and these frogs are actually trying to escape these two seasons, and that is a hot summer and the cold winters. These two are avoided by these frogs, and so usually they dig the burrows and hide themselves and reduce their metabolic rate, and entire the life activities actually lowered, and so they bury themselves inside the soft damp mud, so to tide over all these adverse environmental conditions. And so during these periods, and they actually survive with the help of whatever the glycogen that is stored inside their body, or the fat reserves that are present inside their body, and with them they used to survive. And another one is during these adverse conditions, and they used to perform the cutaneous respiration, and with that help only they used to survive. So the period of inactivity during the summer is called as estivation, which is also called summer sleep, or the period of inactivity during the winter is called hibernation or winter sleep. So these are some of the interesting phenomena exhibited by these frogs and toads. And there is another thing is camouflage, and like the frogs are not easily spotted by their enemies, and like the eagle or the snakes or some of the other enemies that we come across. So they can able to change their color of the skin and to get match with their surroundings, and so they have got the ability to change their skin color to blend with their surroundings, and so such phenomenon is actually called as camouflaging, and it is only to hide themselves or to escape from their enemies. So coming to the it's a classification at the systematic position in the kingdom Animalia, like it belongs to the phylum, of course, the Chordata, and under that class Amphibia, and order Enura or Salientian, like without having the tail, and Salientia, they are hopping or the jumping, leaping animals. And family belongs to the Ranidae, and the genus is Rana, species is Tigrina. In that way the scientific name is Rana tigrina, commonly called as Indian bullfrog. Coming to its external morphological features, and as you know that the body of the frog is somewhat spindle shaped, and in addition to that the body is also dorsoventrally compressed, and the body is, and so it's a spindle shaped body, pointed at the both ends and broad at the center, like, and the dorsoventrally it's a flattened end. And coming to the skin of the frog, and if you look at that one, the skin is actually the thin, and it's also the soft, provided with the mucus. A lot of amount of the mucus is present, which is actually secreted by the mucus glands of the skin, and always trying to keep the skin always moist. And whatever the skin that is covering on the entire the body, the skin actually attaches to the underneath muscles only at certain points, and not entire the skin is totally in contact or touch with the muscles, and only at certain regions are the points of the the skin is actually get attached to the underlying muscles. And so the skin on the dorsal surface, when you look at that one, it is actually the olive green in color with the dark spots here and there, they are actually seen. And when it comes to the ventral surface of the body, it is a pale yellow in color, and the uniformly pale yellow, whereas the dorsal surface is provided with a dark olive green with the dark spots here and there. And one of the most important function of the whole skin is the frog actually they never drinks the water, and it's actually absorbs the water through the skin only. And so we don't see the drinking of the water by the frogs, and but it actually survives by absorbing the water through the skin. And so its skin also serves the function of the absorption of water, and which is required by the body. And coming to its body divisions, and so the body divided into the head, and the remaining whole part is called the trunk. And so it is actually the neck is absent, and also the tail is also absent. These two parts are not present, only the two body parts are head and the trunk are present. And above the snout, at the anterior part of this head region, above the snout, you have got two external nostrils are present, and a pair of external nostrils are present, and behind them a pair of bulged eyeballs are also present, and a pair of bulged eyeballs are present behind that one. And these eyeballs are provided with a nictitating membrane, and the inward folding of that lower eyelid forms into a transparent membrane regarded as a third eyelid, and which actually gives the protection whenever it enters into the waters. And in that way it is provided with a nictitating membrane is present, and giving the protection when it enters inside the water. And behind the eyes you have got a thin membranous stretchable skin is present, which is called the tympanum is present. So this tympanum is responsible for receiving of the airborne vibrations, and which is present just behind the eyelids. And so to receive the sole purpose is to receive the sound waves or the air vibrations. And the trunk region, we have got two pairs of the pentadactyl limbs are actually present, and that is the first pair forelimbs and second pair are hind limbs. And forelimbs are actually shorter, hind limbs are long muscular are present, and hind limbs are provided with the 5 digits are present, and each hind limb is provided with the 5 digits, whereas the forelimbs are provided with the only 4 fingers are present. So compared to the forelimbs, hind limbs are longer as well as muscular, and the forelimbs are actually provided with the 4 digits. And these the shorter forelimbs and the longer forelimbs, all these are responsible for swimming, helps in the swimming, walking, and also burrowing, and also helps in leaping. And so swimming, walking, leaping, and the burrowing, all these functions are performed with the help of these limbs. And one more interesting phenomenon is the frog actually exhibit the sexual dimorphism. So that means that we can able to distinguish the male frog from the female frog due to the development of 2 interesting structures, and especially at the time of the breeding season, and especially in case of the rainy season also. So because they come to the maturity, and also the breeding season is actually the rainy season. So in that during that season, the male frogs tend to develop the 2 interesting structures, and that is at the junction of this upper jaw and the lower jaw, behind this one a pair of bluish sac-like structures and that develops, and they are called ocal sacs, which helps in the amplifying of the sound. And the second one is a development of the copulatory pad or a cushion pad like structure, and that is actually develops at the first digit of the forelimb of male frog. And so this development of the copulatory pad and the ocal sacs to amplify the sound. With these 2 structures, the copulatory pad and the vocal sacs, we can distinguish the male frog from the female frog, which are absent in case of female frog. Coming to its body cavity, coelom or viscera. Body cavity of the frog actually accommodates different types of the visceral organs, and all these are present within the body cavity, and also surrounded by the visceral peritoneum. And that is what the body cavity that present inside the frog. So coelom accommodates the different internal organs or the viscera. Viscera are actually covered by the visceral peritoneum. Now coming to the each and every system that is present inside the frog, and like frog is a well developed vertebrate animal, it forms as an example, it is provided with all the well developed systems are present, like digestion, respiration, circulation, and excretion, nervous, sense organs, and reproduction. And so we are going to deal about the each and every system in a brief manner. So coming to the digestive system, the digestive system of the frog consists of the alimentary canal and also associated with the digestive glands, and together we call it as a digestive system. And as the frog is a carnivorous animal, the length of the alimentary canal is usually short, and if you get the assertion reason also, you can simply write like alimentary canal is short, and the reason is it is a carnivorous animal. And so it's a general view that in all the carnivorous animals the length of the alimentary canal is actually the short, and whereas in comparatively in herbivores it is longer. And coming to the first one, the alimentary canal, it starts with the mouth, it's a long tubular part and starts with the mouth and ends with an anus into the cloaca. So coming to the first part, mouth, and mouth is wide and it is also semicircular, bounded by upper jaw and the lower jaw, and the mouth in turn opens into a wide buccopharyngeal cavity. And actually the buccal cavity and the pharynx it should be end, but whereas in frog, due to the absence of the neck, buccal cavity is fused with the pharynx, so we call it as buccopharyngeal cavity. And it's provided with the upper jaw and lower jaw. No, upper jaw is provided with the teeth, and whereas the lower jaw is actually without the teeth. And inside that buccopharyngeal cavity, the tongue is also present, and the tongue is actually present at the tip of the lower jaw attached to that, and it is a bifid tongue is present, attached in front and remain free behind. And so it is actually get folded backwards, and it actually helps in and capturing of the insects. And then buccopharyngeal cavity leads into the buccopharyngeal cavity later leads into a short tubular structure called the esophagus. And esophagus is actually a very short tubular structure into which the buccopharyngeal cavity actually opens, and the esophagus later gradually leads into a long muscular tubular structure called the stomach, which is actually lie at the left side of the body cavity. And the stomach in turn has got the two sphincters at the anterior and the posterior. At the anterior, where the esophagus opens into the stomach, where at the posterior, where stomach opens into the duodenum. At these two regions, it is provided with a pair of sphincters are present. They are regarded as cardiac sphincter, and here the pyloric sphincter is present. And the stomach is an organ whose function is mainly for the storage as well as helps in the digestion of food. And then next part, the stomach leads into the small intestine, leads into the intestine. Intestine, of course, divided into the small intestine and the large intestine. Small intestine, the proximal part, it's provided with a new-shaped loop-like structure called duodenum, and long coiled this tubular part is called the ileum. And these duodenum and ileum together constitute forms as small intestine, then which finally leads into a wide long tubular another part called rectum. Rectum we can also regard it as a large intestine. And finally the large intestine in turn opens outside through into the anus is present, but actually anus actually opens into the another chamber like structure called cloaca. Cloaca is it's a chamber present at the posterior end of the body, which is a common chamber for both the digestive system as well as urinogenital system. And so both urinogenital and digestion, all they opens into a common chamber called as cloaca. And this cloaca, it's a small chamber and located at the posterior end of the trunk region, which opens outside through another opening and called cloacal aperture, which is present at the posterior end of the trunk in between the hind legs, and in between the two hind legs are the hind limbs, and at the end of the trunk region by means of an opening called cloacal aperture it opens. So in that way that's totally constitute about alimentary canal. So mouth, buccopharyngeal cavity, esophagus, stomach, small intestine divided into the duodenum and the ileum, finally the large intestine, the also called the rectum, which opens into the cloaca through the anus, and cloaca opens outside through cloacal aperture. This is all about the alimentary canal. And coming to the associated digestive glands, and the gastric glands are present inside the stomach, and which are the very small microscopic structures helpful for the production of the gastric juice. And in addition to that, it is also provided with a well developed liver is also present, and which is responsible for the production of the bile juice. And in addition to this, in addition to the liver, it is also provided with an yellowish flat gland is also located inside within the duodenum called pancreas. So pancreas, liver, and these two are the important digestive glands responsible for the production of the bile juice and the pancreatic juice. And the bile juice is get conducted through the bile duct, and the pancreatic juice is conducted through the pancreatic. Both are unite to form into the hepatopancreatic duct, and that hepatopancreatic duct opens into this duodenum part. And so a hepatopancreatic duct which receives the bile juice as well as the pancreatic juice, and and that duct actually opens into this duodenum. But before this bile juices get released into the duodenum, which is stored in temporarily in the greenish sac-like structure called gallbladder. And so it is where the bile juice is actually get temporarily stored, and so whenever it is required, it is slowly get released through this common hepatopancreatic duct and released into the duodenum. The bile juice is actually it's alkaline in nature, greenish yellowish green color fluid without the digestive enzymes, but bile pigments are present, and so helps in actually the emulsification of fats. And the pancreas is actually the tubular, elongated and irregular gland. It is also regarded as a mixed gland, because it is both endocrine as well as exocrine, but major part is actually exocrine, very little, 2% and 2 to 4% is actually the endocrine part. And so apart from that, the ileum and duodenum and ileum also provided with the intestinal glands are present that helps in this production of intestinal juice, and we call it as succus or Sarcus entericus, so that is also called the intestinal juice. And so gastric glands, liver, pancreas and the intestinal glands, and these are all the different types of the digestive glands that are present. Salivary glands are of course absent in case of the frog. So all these produce the different types of the digestive enzymes that in turn helps in the process of digestion. Coming to the feeding and the digestion, the tongue is actually the organ of the capture of the food, and the tongue which is attached at the tip of the lower jaw, it is get everted, and with it help it captures the food, and it is get taken inside the buccopharyngeal cavity, and where the digestion is actually absent inside the buccopharyngeal cavity due to the absence of the salivary glands, and immediately the prey is get swallowed, and from where it pushes from the buccopharyngeal cavity into the esophagus. From esophagus it reaches to the stomach, and so stomach is the actual part where the site of the digestion begins, and so it's the first part and where the food actually starts digesting, and inside the stomach the gastric gland secretes the HCl, and so that the entire food is made into the acidic in nature, and also the food is partially get digested. And so this partially digested acidic food and formed inside the stomach, we call it as chyme, and now this chyme from the stomach is slowly started entering into the small intestine, where it get after entering into the small intestine, the food is thoroughly mixed with the bile juice, pancreatic juice and also the intestinal juice, and where the bile is responsible for the emulsification of the fats, whereas the pancreatic juice and the intestinal juice both are responsible for the helping the digestion of proteins and the fats, and also the carbohydrate substances into the simpler substances like into the amino acids, glucose, fatty acids and glycerol. And finally, after the completion of the digestion, the ileum is the part inside that we are provided with the inner wall is provided with the fine microscopic finger-like projections called microvilli are present. This villi helps in the increasing the area of absorption. In that way, the food is get absorbed, and the undigested food materials finally sent to the last part of the alimentary canal called rectum or the large intestine, where the water is get reabsorbed from the undigested food materials, and so finally the waste are passed out through the cloaca and sent outside the body through cloacal aperture. So in that way, the process of the digestion is get completed with the help of this alimentary canal and the associated digestive glands. So this is all about the digestive system. And coming to the next system that is present in the frog is the respiratory system. And now a frog actually respires. It's an amphibious animal, and it can able to survive both in water as well as on the surface of the land. So it has got different types of respiratory structures, and that helps in respiration. So it performs the three different types of respiratory surfaces, and one is of course the skin, as we already discussed in the introduction, and the another one is the mucus lining present inside the buccopharyngeal cavity, and of course the lungs. So skin, mucus lining present inside the buccopharyngeal cavity, and the another one is the lungs. And with the help, the first one is actually the cutaneous respiration. So it is the most important of all the three types of respiration: cutaneous, buccopharyngeal and the pulmonary. And out of all the three kinds of respiration, cutaneous respiration is actually the most important types of the respiration. The skin is thin and always kept moist, and it is also a scaleless, and exoskeleton is anywhere absent, and it is also highly vascular. So because of the it's always kept moist and highly vascularized, and that in turn helps in the performance of the respiration, where the atmospheric gases are the gases that are dissolved inside the water. They can easily diffuse into this moist skin. From there the exchange of the gases actually occurs. And so skin of the frog should be always kept moist to facilitate the respiration. So it should be kept moist, and sometimes if it is skin get dries, the death of the frog also occurs. And then another one is the buccopharyngeal cavity, and the mucus lining that is present inside the buccopharyngeal cavity also helps in the exchange of the gases. And so vascular lining, and in addition to the skin and lungs, the mucus lining also helps in the exchange of the gases, and especially when it is present on land. And coming to the pulmonary respiration, when frog is on land, it also breathes through its lungs. And so lungs a pair of the lungs are present, which are pinkish and pinkish in color, and also highly vascularized, and which are highly vascularized structures which are present in the trunk region, and as a sac like structures. And so during the pulmonary respiration, the buccopharyngeal cavity, and whatever the buccopharyngeal cavity is present, this buccopharyngeal cavity actually acts as a force pump. And so due to the elevation of the buccopharyngeal cavity, and the pressure is get lowered, that facilitate the entry of the gases inside the buccopharyngeal cavity, and so in that way it acts as a force pump. And so whatever after the taking of the gases inside, the buccopharyngeal cavity is again elevated. And so first one it is lowered, then it is get elevated. As a result of that, the pressure is increased inside that one, that pushes the gases into the lungs, and where the exchange of gases occurs. And again the same process is keep on get repeated during the inspiration and the expiration. So the floor of the buccopharyngeal cavity is get lowered, and again the pressure is get decreased inside that one, and making the gases to expel from the lungs, and from there it again goes out via buccopharyngeal cavity and the nostrils and or the mouth. And so in that way, by the lowering or elevation of the buccopharyngeal cavity, it regarded as force pump, and creating the pressure changes, helping the pushing of the gases into the lungs and the expulsion of the gases. And so in such a way, the lungs also helps in the respiration. So it's because lungs helps in the respiration, it is called pulmonary respiration. So skin acts as a respiratory organ, so it performs a cutaneous respiration, mucus lining of the buccopharyngeal cavity, buccopharyngeal respiration, and the exchange of the gases inside the lungs. So it is called the pulmonary respiration. All the three kinds of the respiratory surfaces it can able to respire. So this is about the respiration. Coming to the another system that is present in case of the frog is the circulatory system. And so circulatory system of the frog actually consists of the blood, heart and the blood vessels. And In addition to that, it is also provided with another two venous systems, and that is both the hepatic and the renal portal systems are present. Now coming to the heart, and the heart is a thick walled muscular chamber and situated at the anteroventral part of the body cavity, and it is provided with the two atria are present, right atrium and the left atrium, separated by interatrial septum and one ventricle and posteriorly, and the whole heart is actually surrounded by a double layered called pericardium is present. A pericardium is present, and a triangular chamber is actually present in case of the heart and on the dorsal surface, and a triangular shaped chamber is present on the dorsal side of the heart, and which opens into the right atrium, and like this one. So on the dorsal side of the heart, it is provided with a triangular shaped chamber is present, which is called a sinus venosus, which is actually formed by two precaval veins and one postcaval veins, and right and the left precaval vein and one postcaval vein, and postcaval vein receives the blood from the posterior parts of the body, and precaval vein collect the blood from the anterior parts of the body, and these three unite together forms into a triangular bag-like structure called sinus venosus, which in turn opens into the right atrium. So this is one structure associated with the heart, and there is another structure associated on the ventral side of the heart that arises from the ventricle, and so it's the major blood vessel, and that as a result of the ventricular systole, the blood pumped to all the parts of the body through the major blood vessel called conus arteriosus, through which the blood actually comes out, and which soon after it divides into the two branches, and each branch in turn divides into the three aortic arches on both the sides, and those three aortic arches are carotid and the systemic and the pulmocutaneous, and like this it is divided into the three aortic arches. So in all the amphibians, it is a characteristic feature of all the amphibians that all the amphibians are actually provided with the three pairs of aortic arches, and that is carotid, systemic and pulmocutaneous, through which actually they distribute the blood to all the parts of the body. And then in addition to that, the three major veins as we earlier discussed, so these are the aortic arches which supply the blood to all the parts of the body, and these are the three major veins, and that is two precaval veins and one postcaval vein collect the blood from the different parts of the body. And so in addition to these parts, and there are another two venous systems are also present inside the frog, and they are hepatic portal system and the renal portal system, and from the veins that collect the blood from the elementary canal, they collect the blood and they open into the liver, and before they opens into the heart, and so before they pour their blood into the heart. And so a system of blood vessels are the veins that connect this elementary canal, different parts of the elementary canal, especially from the stomach to the large intestine, finally pour into the liver. That system of blood vessels we call it as hepatic portal system. And then another one is from the posterior parts of the body are the organs, the blood which is collected is again before pouring into the heart, they go to the kidneys. And so this system of blood vessels connecting the kidney and the posterior parts of organs is called renal portal system. So both hepatic and renal portal systems are well developed in case of the frog. Then coming to the kind of the blood circulation, and as it is provided with a three chambered heart, the two chambers actually receive the right atrium receives the deoxygenated blood and the left atrium receives the oxygenated blood, and both are get separated due to the interatrial septum, and which comes to the ventricle. Ventricle is only a single chamber where both the bloods are mixed and results in the formation of a mixed blood, and this mixed blood only flows through this conus arteriosus to the different parts of the body. So whatever the blood that is collected from the different parts of the body, before it is gets supplied to the same organs, and the flow of the blood occurs through the heart, and that is it receives twice but pumps only once, and so it is called as incomplete double circulation is present in case of the frog. Then coming to the blood and in case of the frog, and so the blood is actually the red in color, and the hemoglobin is present inside the RBC, and plasma, RBC cells, WBC cells are present, leukocytes, and also the blood platelets are also present, called the thrombocytes are present. But here RBC cells are RBC cells are provided with the nucleus, and usually among all the compared to the other vertebrates in amphibians, the RBC are larger in size, and WBC are also nucleated, that helps in defense, and thrombocytes especially helps in case of the clotting of the blood, and by production of the thromboplastin that helps in hemostasis. And in frog you will also come across the presence of the lymph also present, and it has got the separate system to get flow of this lymph, and lymphatic vessels are present, lymphatic hearts are present, and the lymph channels are also present. And so but the only difference exists in between the blood and the lymph is without the RBC, of course, and fewer proteins are present, with the more metabolic wastes are actually present inside the blood, and very few proteins and without RBC, and a little bit of the more metabolic wastes are present. And in that way, that actually the lymph actually differs from that of the blood. And so this is about the blood circulatory system in case of the frog, and that is blood and the heart and structures. And move on to the another system that is present inside the frog is the excretory system. And elimination of the nitrogenous waste materials from the body, which are formed as a result of the metabolism of the amino acids, and that process we call it as excretion. So in order to not only for the elimination of the nitrogenous waste, but also to maintain the water balance and the salt balance. And so maintenance of the salt balance, water balance, and the elimination of the nitrogenous waste materials, and also acid base balance. And so all these are the main functions of the excretory system. And so to perform all these functions, in the frog is provided with the well developed kidneys, and also the ureters and the urinary bladder which is present. And so actually the if you look at the structures of the excretory system, almost it is associated with the reproductive system. So we call it as urinogenital system, and that is excretory system as well as the reproductive system, both are actually associated with each other. So we call it as urinogenital system. And so coming to the male frog, or in the female frog, the kidneys are long and elongated, and a pair of kidneys are present. They are elongated, flat, and also the dark colored structures, and situated at the posterior ends of the body, and one on either side of the vertebral column. And so the long elongated dark colored kidneys are present at the posterior end of the body, one each present on either side of the vertebral column. And so, and they are actually covered by a peritoneal layer, but they are covered by peritoneal layer only on their ventral surface, and ventral surface. So a peritoneal layer which is covering only on one side, that too on the ventral side, such type of the peritoneum is called retroperitoneum, and such organs are called as retroperitoneal organs. And it is also associated with the adrenal gland, and a long elongated adrenal gland is also attached to the kidneys, though it is not actually associated with the excretory in function, but it is associated with the kidneys. And then the entire kidneys are provided with the functional structures are present, or the functional units, and which we call them as uriniferous tubules, or the nephrons are present inside the each kidney. And so then after that, these nephrons from the posterior outer side corner of the each kidney, and a pair of the ureters actually get arranged, because these are not only the conducts the urine, but they also helps in conduction of the gametes, especially the sperms. And so in that way they are actually called as urinogenital ducts, and they conduct the both the urine as well as the sperm, and that's why they are called urinogenital system. And that means the excretory system is actually functionally associated with the genital system, and both are interconnected. It is called urinogenital system. It is only in case of the male frog, but whereas in case of the female frog it is something it's a different. And so in case of the female frog they are only called as ureters, and they conduct only the urine, whereas the ova are conducted through oviducts. That means the both are you don't find any functional connection in between the genital system and the excretory system, and that is you will come across only in case of the male frog. That is testis opens into the kidney of its uriniferous tubules, and that is why the ureter is responsible for conduction of both urine as well as the sperm. So we call it as urinogenital ducts. So finally, both the ureters and they get opens into the cloaca, and their openings are provided with sphincters are present and for the regulation of that flow. And a pear-shaped thin-walled urinary bladder is also present for the temporary storage of the urine, which also opens into the cloaca, and finally the cloaca in turn opens outside through cloacal aperture, so which helps in the elimination of nitrogenous waste materials. And so this is about the excretory system, and that is present in case of the frog. And coming to the integratory system, and that is present in case of the frog. And after this excretory, we come to the integrating system, and the control and the coordinating systems and that are highly developed in case of the frog. And so there is a chemical coordination and integration is present, and also the neural control and coordination is also seen in case of the body of the frog. And so the chemical control and coordination is brought about by the endocrine glands by the production of the hormones, and the neural control coordination is brought about by the nervous system, that is the brain and the spinal cord and its nerves. And so these two are the systems, and endocrine and nervous systems two are responsible for bringing the integration and coordination. So these two systems together we call it as integrating systems. And in case of the endocrine system in frog, they are the well developed endocrine glands are present, and they are pituitary gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, and the pineal gland. They are all are well developed actually in case of the frog. And in addition to that, islets of the Langerhans in associated with the pancreas, and also the gonads are also present, adrenal glands. They all are helpful for the production of the hormones and helps in bringing the chemical integration and coordination. Then coming to the nervous system, a well developed nervous system is actually get developed in case of the frog. And this nervous system in turn get divided into the three parts, and that is central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system and autonomous nervous system. And the central nervous system constituted formed by the brain and the spinal cord, whereas peripheral nervous system constituted formed by the cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Autonomous nervous system constituted formed by the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. And so if you look at the brain is actually the enclosed inside a bony structure called the cranium is present, which is called the brain box, and the brain is get divided into the forebrain, midbrain and the hindbrain, and like that the brain is actually get divided into the three parts, and dorsal and ventral views. Forebrain constituted formed by a pair of olfactory lobes, cerebral hemispheres and the diencephalon. These three parts constitute to form diencephalon, cerebral hemispheres, olfactory lobes, and these three constitute to form the forebrain. Olfactory lobes are concerned with the sense of smell, and they act as a center for the smell, and whereas the two cerebral hemispheres are mainly responsible for the control of the voluntary muscular movements. And whereas the diencephalon, it's actually the responsible for the perception of heat, cold, pain, and also integrates the two autonomous nervous system, that is both sympathetic as well as the parasympathetic nervous system, and those two functions are get integrated by this diencephalon. So olfactory lobe acts as a center for the smell, cerebral hemispheres are responsible for the control of the voluntary muscular movements, and it acts as a center for that, and diencephalon acts as a center for the perception of heat, cold, pain, and also brings the integrity of the autonomous nervous system. And then coming to the midbrain, and midbrain mainly constitute formed by a pair of optic lobes, and two optic lobes are present. These two optic lobes are forms as a center for the vision, and they are the sense of the sight, and these two optic lobes. And then coming to the hindbrain, the hindbrain has got two parts, that is the cerebellum, and another one is the medulla oblongata. Cerebellum is actually responsible for the bringing the coordination in between the muscular movements and voluntary muscular movements, and also responsible for the maintenance of the equilibrium. Whereas the medulla oblongata is responsible for the control of all the involuntary functions, and so controls the involuntary functions are under the control of this medulla oblongata. This medulla oblongata in turn continues behind as a spinal cord, but before it is continuous as a spinal cord, it comes outside through the cranium, which is provided with a large opening at the posterior end and called as foramen magnum, through which the brain continues behind as a spinal cord. Now, the spinal cord at the center provide with a cavity which is called a neural canal, whereas a cavity present inside the brain we call them as ventricles, and the cavity present inside the spinal cord we call it as a central canal. So, the ventricles of the brain and the neural canal of the spinal cord are filled with the cerebrospinal fluid, and this entire the spinal cord is get enclosed within the vertebral column. So, that is the main function of the vertebral column, to give protection to this spinal cord. The main function of the spinal cord is it acts as a middleman between the brain and the effectors. Effectors in body are the muscles and glands, and so in between the effectors and the brain, the spinal cord actually acts as a middleman and coordinating in these two functions. And so these are the different parts of the brain and different locations and the functions which are actually get performed by the brain. And so in detail, and coming to the different types of the sensory structures and that are also associated with the brain and associated with this nervous system. And frog is provided with all the different types of the sensory organs are present, and such as the sense organs which are responsible for the touch and which are responsible for taste, smell and sight and also hearing. And all the 5 different types of the sense organs are actually well developed in case of the frog, and that is vision, hearing and the taste, smell, touch. All the 5 types of the sensory organs are actually well developed. So they are actually get divided into the 2 different types, and a well organized structures and the cellular endings, and they are in 2 different types they are actually get divided. So eyes and the ears are well organized structures, and that is they are which are related with the sight and which are related with the hearing. And whereas the structures, that sense organs that are associated with the smell and the touch and these are and the taste, and they are only the cellular aggregations, and they are only regarded as a cellular aggregation. So on the surface of the body or the nasal epithelium or the taste bud, you will find the cells are present, and with sometimes the cilia are also associated with. The nerve endings are seen, and this is the nerve, and their nerve endings are present at the end, at the bases of these some of the cells. And so those cells which are present at the different locations of the body ends with the nerve endings and are provided with the nerve endings at their bases. Free surfaces are usually provided provided with the cilia or without the cilia. Those structures are called as cellular aggregations, and so they actually functions as sense organs, and these are actually get located on the surface of the skin and at the some locations of the skin. They are also located in case of nasal epithelium. This is the one area, and there are similarly they are also located at the tips of the taste buds, and they are represented as papilla. So these skin associated, these cellular aggregations which are present on attached to the skin, and they are mainly concerned with the touch. They are also called tactile receptors, which are associated with the nasal epithelium. They are concerned with the smell, and which are associated with this taste buds, and they are helps in detecting the taste. And so these 3 different kinds of the senses are very simple sense organs. They are only represents as cellular aggregations, ends with the innervated by the nerve endings. And whereas well developed structures are these cellular aggregations that are get modified and transformed into an organ like structures. They are well developed, and that's why they are called well organized structures. And these sense organs are eyes and the ears. And Coming to the eyes, and as we studied earlier in the introduction, a pair of the eyes are present in the head region as a bulging sun, and this eye is provided with the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid. Upper eyelid is anyway immovable, lower eyelid is immovable, and the lower eyelid, inside that one a membranous folding is seen, and which is called nictitating membrane, and that helps in, especially whenever the frog enters into the water, this nictitating membrane helps in the protection. And this in addition to this, inside that ear and inside the eye, it is provided with an important layer called, one of the innermost layer of the eye called retina, and this retina also provided with the two different kinds of the modified nerves, neurons are present there. Rods and cones are present, and rods especially helps in case of the dim light vision, whereas the cones that are present, that helps in case or the provide the color vision and providing the color vision. So these two kinds of the cells and helps in the makes the vision possible. And then coming to the ears, and external ear anyway it is absent in case of the frog, only middle ear and internal ear are present. And the middle ear is actually provided with an stretchable membrane that is present behind the bulgings of the ear, that is called tympanum. Sole function is to receive the sound vibrations and are airborne vibrations, and associated towards the inner side of the tympanum, a dumbbell shaped bone is also present, which is called middle ear ossiculum, called as columella orisson. It's a middle ear ossicle is present, and which is the tympanum. So these two structures constitute to form the middle ear in case of the frog. External ear is anyway absent, and which is in turn get connected to the Watt spring-like structure, and so very less number of the circles are present, and that is the internal ear part, like the simple cochlea is present. So these three parts, and the tympanum, columella oris and the simple cochlea-like structure, these three structures helps in hearing. But in addition to that, the ear is not only responsible for functioning as an hearing structure, helps in receiving the sound vibrations, it also helps in balancing. So there the two structures are associated with the ear, and a large utriculus is present and a small sacculus is also present, and the two structures are, one is utriculus and then another one called sacculus. So utriculus and sacculus are also associated with the internal ear, and these two structures and with the three semicircular canals, and that is the most important one. So there are the three semicircular canals are also present. So three semicircular canals and utriculus and sacculus, all these structures and that mainly helps in maintenance of the balance. So ear actually performs the two functions, one is the hearing and the one is the balancing. And balancing is actually brought about by the three semicircular canals, utriculus and sacculus, whereas the tympanum, columella oris and the simple cochlea, they actually helps in hearing. So these are the eye and the ear, these are the well organized sense organs present in case of the frog, whereas the receptors which are associated with the touch, smell and taste, they are only regarded as cellular aggregations. And coming to the last part, that is a reproductive system. So a well developed reproductive systems are present in case of the frog. So male frog and female frog, they both can be easily get distinguished, especially during the breeding seasons. That's why we discussed in the earlier that they exhibit the sexual dimorphism. A male frog can be easily differentiated from the female frog with the help of the ocal sacs and the copulatory pattern. But internally, the male reproductive system and the female reproductive system both are well developed in case of the frogs. Coming to the male reproductive system, the male reproductive system consists of a pair of oval shaped yellowish structures are present. So a pair of ovaries are present which are yellow structures, ovoid structures are present, and inside them you have got which are actually attached to the dorsal body wall of the kidney by means of the peritoneal layer. A double fold of the peritoneum is present with which they are actually get attached, which is called a mesorchium. Mesorchium is the layer with which they are actually get attached. This is the peritoneal layer which the testes are actually get attached to. Now each kidney is provided with several number of a numerous number of minute tubules are present, and which are called seminiferous tubules are present. Innumerable number of seminiferous tubules are present, which are actually the sites of the spermatogenesis. And these seminiferous tubules, innumerable number, in turn get opens into the kidney by means of the 10 to 12 fine tubular structures, and those 10 to 12 fine tubular structures are called vasa efferentia. So vasa efferentia are the structures which connects the seminiferous tubules of the testes, and which in turn opens into a longitudinal canal and that runs towards the inner side of the kidney, which is called a Bidder's canal, into which they get opens. So this is actually the a Bidder's canal. So into this the vasa efferentia actually get opens, and the Bidder's canal in turn opens into the ureters by means of the transverse tubules. So these are transverse tubules. So transverse tubules which in turn connects to the ureter are, which we also call it as urinogenital duct. So this is a path of the seminiferous tubule, the path of the traveling of the sperms, which are produced from the seminiferous tubules, which finally enter into the vasa efferentia, which opens into the Bidder's canal. Bidder's canal in turn connected to the ureters with the help of transverse tubules, and from there it enters into the urinogenital duct. So this is a path of the traveling of the sperms. So now from the both the sides, the urinogenital ducts in turn get opens into the cloaca, as we already studied in case of the excretory system. So this is a simple male reproductive system, and testes and their ducts and their ureters, which in turn opens into the cloaca. Coming to the female reproductive system, the female reproductive system actually provided with a pair of ovaries are present, which are dark irregular shaped masses like structures are seen, which are responsible for the production of the ova, which are also get attached to the kidney by means of a double fold of the peritoneum, which is called meso-ovarium. So mesorchium is a layer, a peritoneal layer with which the testes are get attached, and the meso-ovarium is a fold of the peritoneum. Female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries are present, which are dark colored and irregular masses like structures are present, and these ovaries are get attached to the kidneys and also the dorsal body wall by means of a double fold of peritoneum called meso-ovarium. So it is a structure with which these ovaries are attached to the kidneys as well as to the dorsal body wall, and these ovaries are responsible for production of ova. In addition to these ovaries, the ovaries it's also provided with a pair of highly convoluted tubules are present, which are called oviducts. As we seen in case of the male reproductive system, it is functionally has got connection with the excretory system, but whereas the female reproductive system has got no functional connection with the excretory system. So a separate oviducts are present, and which has got a wide funnel like structure is present with an also the opening called ostium that helps in the collection of the ova from the body cavity, which they are released, and which are in turn get opens into a highly convoluted tubules called oviducts. And these oviducts, before they get open into the cloaca, it's provided with a swollen sac like structure is present, a wide sac like structure is present, which is called ovisacum. This is called ovisacum, where the ova are temporarily get stored and before they are get released into the ova. So this posterior end of these ureters are little bit enlarged, and they are called as ovisacs, which in turn opens into the cloaca. So both these ovisacs open separately into the cloaca, and cloaca finally opens outside to the cloacal aperture. Now these are the brief structures of the reproductive system of the male as well as the female. Now coming to the copulatory part as well as this one, The frog both will undergo an act of the copulation. So this act of the copulation is called amphlyxis, and during this amphlyxis, the both male and female frogs are responsible for the release of the both sperms as well as the ovum. So the group of the sperms are the mass of the ovum or the mass of the sperms, and that are released into the waters, and mass of the ova they are called as span, and the mass of the sperms we call it as Milton respectively, and which are get released into the waters. And so these two, both the sperms and ova, get unite together, and the union of these two occurs within the water, and so it's called the fertilization. So fertilization is actually occurs within the water, and so it is external. And after that, once it is get the act of the fertilization is over, then the development actually get starts. And so the development in case of the frog, it is indirect, and that means the life history includes that the larval stage is present. And so the larva, it is aquatic completely, and it breathes with the help of gills, and it is also herbivorous in nature. And so as it's a gill breathing, herbivorous and aquatic in nature, and slowly this after the larva stages get completed, the tadpole larva metamorphose and get transforms into the adult, and where an adult it is an air breathing one, and again it is a carnivorous one. And so this metamorphosis, during this process of the metamorphosis, a complete transition from the herbivorous to the carnivorous nature, from the gill breathing to the air breathing mode, it totally changes. And so during the larval stage, as it breathes to the gills and also feeds feeds herbivorously, so and also being aquatic, it's almost look like similar to that of the fish, and so which are actually the ancestors of these frogs. And so it's the resemblance of the tadpole larva to the fish. It's actually the it's called as, it forms as an example for the theory of recapitulation, and that is also called biogenetic gland or ontogeny repeats phylogeny. You will study it as an example in case of the evolution lesson. And so like ontogeny is nothing but the developmental history, and the phylogeny is nothing but the ancestral history. And so during the current developmental history, if the animal tend to develop if animal tend to repeat their ancestral characters, then it forms as a best example for this biogenetic law, or ontogeny repeats the phylogeny. And so during this development, and in the majority of these tetrapods, and actually in the majority of the frog is also in tetrapod or the amphibian, we actually see the development of amnion layer and during their development. And but whereas in case of the fishes and in case of the amphibians, you don't see the development of the amnion layer. So as the amnion layer is not seen, they are regarded as anamniotes, and it forms as an example for that. And so coming to the finally the economic importance, and it's the in what way it is beneficial to the mankind. And so frog is, of course, it's a beneficial to the mankind, and because they are insectivorous in nature, and also helps in reducing the insect population. And in some of the countries like the China and Japan, and there the muscular thighs which are present, they are also used as for the human consumption. So they are exported. It has got the huge export value, and the quantities are also present, and for this one. And but as it is has got the high export value, legally it is nowadays it is get banned now. And so due to the overuse of agrochemicals, they are getting vanished as the fast rates, causing the loss of biodiversity also. And so, and the small froglets are also used as a bait for the capture of the fishes, and they are mainly responsible for the one most important thing is they are responsible for the maintenance of the ecological balance, and especially by reserving the some of the important food links and in case of the ecosystems. And so this frog are also used as a dissecting animal, and in the for the dissecting animal, for whereas for the giving the explanation of this explanation of the all the systems that are present inside. And so it is also actually the discouraging nowadays, and because killing of these frogs indiscriminately responsible for the causing the extinction of this species in future course. So now they are preferred to go for the models rather than the dissecting of these animals. And so this is all about the something interesting aspects about the frog.